Perhaps the most refreshing thing that I've seen to come out of the Dune Awakening communication in recent days, since they started doing a lot of publicity around this, since the launch of the Dune 2 movie and all the Dune Direct stuff, was this statement that they made yesterday morning on social media. We agree that religion is an integral part of the Dune universe. That is why in Dune Awakening you will meet and interact with people of different religions along your journey. However, as opposed to the story presented in the books, the player is not a messiah and will not play a major role in any of those religions. Leading people on a holy war is not why you arrive on Arrakis. And I think that that's very refreshing to see Funcom coming out ahead of all the people who are going to try to make statements about what should or shouldn't be or what should or shouldn't happen with the factions of the games by saying, look, you're not here to be one of the central characters in the storylines that come from the books. You're here to be a player behind the scenes. So the political machinations can be taking place, the religious machinations can be taking place, um, all of the religious and political backstabbing and plots that are going on behind the scenes can be there as a backdrop for the world without it needing to be integral to the storyline of this particular game. Because you're coming in, you got to think about this for a minute as you're just here to survive on a planet. We don't know the backstory yet. We have seen sort of some of the you know I don't want to say that it's necessarily the intro stuff, but we did get to see in the Dune Direct event. You're arriving in a cave and then you're coming out from the cave and you've got to deal with the sun and the heat and the shade and the water and all these things, and you're being thrust into that environment needing to survive in the desert. And then once you get survival under wraps, you can then start to explore the world around you and find the various factions. They've talked about the Landsrad being a part of the faction component driving the PvP, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Again, we don't know a ton of information about that, so if I'm misquoting something, I'm just going based on what I heard from the direct. It sounded like that aspect of it was more of the high level. If your guild wants to participate in sort of the bigger storylines that are going on between the factions, then you could be a part of that. But it's very refreshing to me to see the team taking a step back and declaring very early on, this is what our game isn't. So I think that's important because if you're coming, I know there's going to be a certain percentage of people who come to this game with preconceptions from the books. I loved, if you haven't ever followed Raymond Feist, he wrote the Rift War saga. He's an elderly gentleman now, an elderly author, but he's got some great commentary over on his Facebook page, which I think is the only social media presence he manages, where he talks about people's expectations when it comes to adaptations, because his works have been adapted many times over the years. He's been involved with some of those adaptations, the Betrayal at Krondor game, and the follow-up to that in the 90s. I don't remember the name of the follow-up. Um, and then he's got a film adaptation, or excuse me, a TV series adaptation that's currently going through. And he was talking about how, anytime someone goes into making an adaptation, they do so with the best of intentions, because they're trying to tell a story that is based on their perceptions and their version of the books that they've read. And I like the fact that we're getting a statement here that kind of strips it all down to the very bare components and said, really what you're doing here on the planet is to survive on a desert planet, which happens to have all of this other stuff going on as the backdrop of the story, but it's not the core story unique to your character. And I'm very happy for that because if you've been around my channel for any length of time, the one thing I will constantly nitpick games about is when they throw you into like the prophesied one storyline, like at the very beginning of the game, and it's like suddenly you're the chosen one and you're the prophesied one, and it's like they got rid of that here because it's, guess what? Technically, if you want to follow the story of the Kwisatz Haderach, that's not you. That's the bloodline that the Bene Gesserits have been working on with this, blending of the Atreides and the Harkonnens and things that have been going on for, hundreds and thousands of years. That has nothing to do with your character whatsoever. By the way, this has got me inspired. I was doing the Decoding Dune series last year as a podcast as we were watching the first film. Chris and I came back and watched it. And now that we're getting the second film, I don't happen to live at the moment where our homestead is. We're down here, and the nearest city is like 3 hours away, so we didn't get to go see Dune 2 in the theaters. I'm gonna have to wait on that for until it comes to home media. But what I am very happy to see is just let the films be the films, let the books be the books, let the game be its own thing. You're just a player in that story. You're one of the sort of non-player characters in that you're here to live your life and do your things and exist on the planet, but let's leave the religion and the politics to the characters of the books and the films. I think it's a great way to do it. I'm looking forward to knowing more and learning more. Obviously, there's still a lot of unknowns yet. I was very pleased with everything I saw out of Dune Direct. That was obviously the first showcase. We don't know the cadence at which the follow-up showcases are going to be happening. I'll be covering all of them as often as I can. Our community is prepped and ready to go for this. Obviously, right now we're heavy on World of Warcraft and retail, and we're doing Enshrouded on the weekends. But I think the current idea is, depending on the timeline here, those of us who are playing Enshrouded together on Saturdays and Sundays are going to be making that transition over to Dune Awakening later this year, assuming this happens later this year. We have no confirmation that this is coming this year. At least I haven't seen any release dates. I saw one news outlet trying to say the other day, like, coming later in 2024, and I was like, I don't know that they've actually said it's coming later in 2024. I think Joel was very careful with his wording at the direct about how, it'll be ready when it's ready, and we'll get there when we get there. But I think based on the fact that they're in more and more closed betas, I think most people are hopeful. But there's still a lot of questions up in the air related to like crossplay. Because I know, for example, I really want to play it on either the Xbox or the PlayStation. But am I also going to be able to play with my friends on the PC, or are we all going to need to be on the PC playing together? Like, there's just so many questions that we don't know yet in terms of how the crossplay is going to work, how the PvP is going to work, or any of that stuff. But I can tell you one thing I do love is the fact that we're not going to have to worry about being a core central character in that storyline, that the Atreides and the Harkonnens and the Empire is on, because we could just kind of sit back, let the Landsrad do what they're going to do, and we could just be behind the scenes being the smugglers and the water merchants and the mercenaries and people living their lives on Arrakis and trying to survive. I think that's the coolest thing to me. Quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. And I also I know that I was in Discord today and I was watching the Q&A channel, the questions channel. I was very refreshed to see some of the commentary around narrative and storytelling, because one of the things I've been noticing recently as survival games have continued to evolve is that you got games like Enshrouded where they sort of tease the RPG element, but then you have games like Robin Hood Sherwood Builders where the RPG element is right up front and personal and it's the most important thing, and then they've blended a crafting survival game on top of that. The idea that dialogue is going to be more prevalent. There's going to be a more prevalent narrative in this game compared to many other survival games, and that makes me very excited, because I know I've talked about this publicly in the past. I sort of disconnect when games don't have a huge narrative structure, and they just sort of throw you, like the whole throw you on a desert island and you're expected to survive with like no reason for being there. Those are the games that kind of lose me. Whereas when I'm given a story and a reason to be there, I'm much more engaged. And I know the Dune IP well enough that I'm happy to make some of that up in my head, because I already know Arrakis and I know the books and I know the films and I've seen the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries and I've seen the David Lynch film, and I know this lore probably not as well as I know Lord of the Rings, but it's up there. And so I'm really excited just to see what it's going to be like to have that as a backdrop and be able to make my own space with the friends that we're going to be coming in to play with from our community, because I know there are a handful of us right now who are planning on weaving this into everything else we're doing. As we get closer to the release date, we'll start to know more and everything else. Anyway, I'm rambling. This is only supposed to be like a 3 or 4 minute thing, and now I'm like 9 or 10 minutes in. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. I will cover more Dune Awakening as often as there's news and as often as I have things to talk about. This wasn't necessarily news. It was just something that I keyed off of, and I really appreciated them making a statement on, because I think there are people who want things to be page by page adaptations, and this is not an adaptation. It's more of a inspired by, alternate universe set in the same world. Kind of like I love the way they did, Lord of the Rings Online comes to mind as a game that's done a very good job of establishing itself within that world in sort of a separate timeline, and all the things that other people are doing within the world, while you have the Fellowship of the Ring going off and doing their things, and you're just sort of interacting with those players and taking a back seat while you go off and do other things for other people while they're off on their main quest. I think it's very interesting, and I can't wait to see where this goes. Daily streams here and on Twitch. Don't forget to follow along, like, subscribe at the bell icon. I do a lot of different games, so check out the playlists. There's a Discord. There's a Patreon page if you want to follow my work as an author. You can get my latest fantasy novel with the links down below. I'll see everybody in the next one. Stay safe. Happy gaming, everybody.